Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this final formal lecture for the year. I just want to touch on something. We've gone through all of the study material and everything. So the final thing that I just want to have a look at is cash flows and in particular S curves and how they work. And then before I get into a practical session of S curves and how they usually work, I just put up this following slide to give you a bit of an idea how a normal project expenditure usually works. So you will see that on the graph we have the ability to influence the cost, here indicated as a line on the graph, and you will see as the project progresses, so as the project moves forward, you have less and less opportunity to influence the cost of the project. So in the initial stages, the example that I've been alluding to for a while is, or constantly, is that if you lower the size of the project or look at the shape of the project, you have more influence on the total cost of the project than later on by just doing cosmetic changes, for instance, on the type of finishes that you're going to install on the project. So you can see that the influence that you will have diminishes as the project continues. And then you will see the basic project layout and phases. You have your initiation phase, your conception, and then you progress into your construction phase and then your operation phase. You will see the operation phase shown here continues for the entire lifetime of the building that was constructed. So you will see in the initiation phases, this is basically stages 1 to 4, where 1 to 3, where you will have your planning, your cost, and you will do your feasibility studies, and you will have a look at what the project would cost. Then you get into the actual design stages, where you have your conception of what's going to happen. The developer might have to purchase land, so you will have quite a big expenditure here, and then you will have a lot of planning costs, payment of fees of the professionals or whoever is involved in designing this project for him. Then it usually goes out on tender in stage 4, and then you have your start of your construction project, where a lot of money is then expended again for the actual construction of the project. And then you will see your operation and maintenance cost has quite a linear upward spiral over the lifetime of the project. Okay, so you can see this is called a cost curve. So what we're going to look at particularly is, let me just get another color, is the construction section here. So we're going to look at this little window of where the construction cost is actually managed. Why we look at this is usually because it is where most of the expenditure for the client, or immediate expenditure is for the client, and you can see it has quite a high gradient of expenditure, and thus it's very important to be able to understand how to manage this process. So the example that I've got here is a very simple example. So it is a project with a project value of 500,000 Rand, and you can see it was divided into certain weeks, 3-week cycles. They call it the expenditure, although usually we work not with expenditure but with value of work done, because if the contractor invoices according to the value, his payment certificates, he has usually he has less cost than the actual value that's being paid out to him. Also, there's a delay from when he submits his payment certificate to when he actually receives his the payment for that payment certificate. So usually we refer to value on the project. So the project, in this case, in week 3, after week 3, there was still a 0 value of work done. Then we can see in the next slide we will actually have the actual values, or the table for this. On week 12 there was 100,000 rands worth of work done, up to week 30 where we have a value of 500,000 that was done for the project. So just putting it in into perspective, in week 3 the value of work was 0. Week 6 we had a value of 20,000, 50,000, 105,000, 190,000, and 290,000. Okay, and going up to 500,000. Okay, and then what I just alluded to earlier on was that yes, the contract value was 500,000, but the contractor's actual cost was only 450,000, because he had a profit built into his cost of 50,000. Material, subcontractors, etc. need to be paid on a monthly basis. So that was what I was alluded to. So the cost of the contractor might be much more than the actual money that he's actually getting into that section. So in the later years, especially with the construction managers, we do working capital quite a bit on looking at where the biggest deficit of money or cash flow would be on a project, and we do a lot of calculations towards that because it's such an important item. So just for you for taking note for now. Okay, in the next slide I'm just going to elaborate on why we use cumulative value. So you can see that this values that's given here is not the actual values within that periods of 3 weeks, but it's a cumulative values done within that weeks. So from week 3 to 6 there was a 20,000 rand value added to the project, and then you can see from week 6 to 9 there was not a 50,000 value added, it was a 30,000 value that was added to the project to achieve a total value of 50,000 rand, and so forth for all of the rest of the months. Okay, so what I mentioned in the previous slide is about cumulative value. So I just wanted to show you a simple example of how we usually do cash flows. We've got a very simple project here. I'm just going to zoom in so that everyone can see. We've got our project life cycle, or the program that we've scheduled here, and we've got it's a project called a new house, and it's a project that runs over 3 months. So we have week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's very simple division that we did for this project, so it doesn't necessarily go like this. As you progress in the years, you will get involved with Microsoft Project, CCS, etc., which actually works out the total months, and where public holidays, the builders break in December becomes very important, etc., etc. So what we're looking at here is we had our different trades. We use our different trades for our scheduling purposes, and from our BOQ that was developed on this project we could establish a basic cash flow. So we had our simple setting, site establishment, setting out of site in our first week of the project. We started with our excavations in the second week, casting of footings in the third, etc., etc. So you can see how the cost accumulated on the project. So this was just a scenario that we sketched. So a simple thing to get to your S-curve on this project, we just added all of our items together. So very importantly, what I'm alluding to in the previous slide is, yes, in week 1 we had a value of 24,000 Rand for the project. In week 2 we had 180,000 Rand for the project. Then you can see it went down. It's now 120,000 in the third week and only 100,000 in the fourth week. But whenever you are developing your S-curve, you always look at your cumulative value. So it's very important to do your cumulative value for a project. So you will have this current week's expenditure plus your previous week's expenditure to get to a total project value of 204,000 for up to that specific date. So in all essence, this is what we use whenever we're developing our S-curve. So you can see this blue line is where we got our values from for this S-curve that we developed. So you can see week 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it is our S-curve. It's quite a linear curve that we've got. If I do compress this a little bit more, you can see it makes a little bit more of a S-curve. But each project is different. Many projects will have a slow expenditure at the beginning and then picks up towards the end. What one usually wants is a slow start, and in your first third of your project you will have a third of your project's expenditure, and then half of your expenditure will be in the second third of your project, and then you will have the remainder of your expenditure in your last third of your project. So that's what you usually aim for, and that's where the name, the S-curve, comes from, as alluded into in the study notes, and that what we have covered before. So with regard to your final informal, I've sketched a very simple example or scenario of your of a cash flow that you have to develop. You do not necessarily have to develop it into so much detail as I've shown here. All that you need to make sure is that you have all of the apply the percentages correctly and look at your cumulative value to actually complete your informal 4. I know the informal 4 is now being squeezed in at the end of the year, but it's a very small informal. You will see the marks, it's only 10 marks that it contributes to your informal mark. So but it's quite an important concept that you need to understand going into your second year and your third year of studies. So please make sure that you do understand the concepts of the S-curve. I think there shouldn't be too much trouble with regard to that.